Hello everyone out there in AP Lang world. Just wanted to give you a brief review of the terms that are covered in Unit 8 of the AP Lang curriculum. Now, I know what you might be thinking. The updated abbreviated version of the AP Lang exam only goes through Unit 7, so why are we looking at Unit 8? Units 8 and 9 are mainly review. So all of the terms that come up in these two units are review from the first few units that we were covered, and they all kind of go over the terms that you would use for a rhetorical analysis or when you're asked to write an argument. So don't worry, it's all review, bro. You've actually already seen this PowerPoint, so we just wanted to put it up here, go through it, and make sure that you understood what you were going to be asked to do for a rhetorical analysis. So the very first term that they're going to start asking you about in multiple choice questions and ask you to analyze in your essays is the term rhetorical situation. Now there are a few things that come into play for the rhetorical situation. You take into consideration the text, so what is the actual piece, the letter, the speech, the essay, what is it, who the author is, what their background is, what are they trying to achieve, who the audience is, who are they writing for, what is their purpose, what are they trying to achieve, and also the setting, what's going on during the time period in which the piece was written. So all of those things mash together, and you take them into consideration and you put them all together in one essay, which is called a rhetorical analysis. So we're going to go through these terms and we're going to talk about how you would use them. Now you might remember this term. It freaked you guys all out the first time that you had seen it because you never heard of it before. So remember the exigence. The exigence is the author's need. So the piece's need. There's a problem that exists in society. There's a problem that exists in whatever field of study the author is interested in. There is some sort of problem. The need is the solution. What do we need to fix this problem? So it could be something that all of society needs, or it could be something that just the author needs. What is the need that they want to fix the problem? What solution do they want? What solution do they need to fix whatever problem that they see? That's all the term exigence means. If you remember this funny little YouTube clip, feel free to pause this video, go back to the PowerPoint, which is on Google Classroom, and click on it. It's that news clip that we watched in class where the person is talking about a need that they see in society and the problem that they see, what they need to fix it. So it'll give you a little chuckle and hopefully it'll make this lesson come back to you. The next thing to take into consideration is the audience. The biggest takeaway that I want you to get from this slide, and if you remember from all of the rhetorical analysis pieces that we looked at, is you are not the audience. I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back that are not paying attention. You, not the audience. There is going to be a specific audience in mind. The author is going to be talking to a group that has deep-seated beliefs and deep-seated needs that the author has to address. You have to take into consideration those beliefs, those needs, not your own. So I read a lot of rhetorical analysis papers where you guys said, this made me feel, this made me think. The author did not take you into consideration when writing this piece. A lot of times you're given historical pieces. You weren't even born yet. So who is the audience? What are their beliefs? What are their needs? What is the author trying to make them feel? Not you. So if you remember, we looked at the Florence Kelly piece in class. She was speaking at a suffragette movement, so her audience was mainly female. When she was speaking, her problem that she saw was the problem of child labor. Her need, her exigence, was that she needed laws to be passed to protect children in society. So she looked at her audience, mainly women, probably a lot of mothers out there. So the examples that she used were all about little girls going to work because she knew that that would manipulate her audience. They would picture themselves, they would picture their daughters, and they would want to protect them. So you have to figure out who your audience is. The other piece that we looked at was the letter of Benjamin Banneker to Thomas Jefferson. He knew that Thomas Jefferson had been really active in the Revolutionary War. He also knew that Thomas Jefferson was one of the framers of the Declaration of Independence. So he used a lot of language from that document and made Jefferson think about the time prior to the Revolutionary War when he himself was being controlled by the British. And he used those images and that terminology to help Jefferson see that he needed to end slavery. The problem? Slavery. The exigence? We need laws in place to put an end to slavery. The audience, Thomas Jefferson. What could Benjamin Banneker use, or what did Benjamin Banneker use to manipulate that specific audience? Your audience can be very specific, like the two that I just gave, or it can be very general. It can be like the American public. And in that case, what are deep-seated American values? If it's a certain time period in history, what is the need? If it was written during the Great Depression, what does everybody need during that time period? If it's a time period where there's, I don't know, a pandemic going on, what would be the need of the American people? Even though it's a general audience, they're still going to have a common problem, a common need that needs to be met. So again, if you take away anything, I'm sorry guys, you're not the audience. Who is the audience? What do they want? What do they believe? What would they need? Okay? Next, we take a look at the context. So it's not only important to figure out who the audience is, but it's also important to figure out what's going on during the time period. So I just talked about if a speech was given in the middle of a pandemic, you would have to know that. So always when you're given the piece to analyze, take a look at the date, take a look at the directions, and they will give you information about the context. What historically was happening and how would that affect the audience? How would that create problems for them? How would it create exigence? How would it create needs? So always try and remember what your history is. If they tell you a certain war is going on, or they give you just a date, try to remember what is important about that time period in history. What was going on, and how would that affect the audience, and how does the author make stylistic choices that would kind of relate to that context and manipulate their audience in that way. Next, we take into consideration the author's purpose. Now, from elementary school on, you've been told that the author's purpose is to persuade, to inform, to entertain, and that is true, that you have to take a step up on the sophistication scale. So if they're trying to persuade, what are they trying to persuade the audience to do? If they're trying to inform, what are they informing the audience about? If they're entertaining them, why are they entertaining them? What methods do they use to entertain them? So it's not enough just to say the author's purpose was to inform. The author's purpose was to persuade. You have to say the author's purpose was to persuade the audience to believe something specific, take action on an issue, to do something. So make sure that when you are wording your thesis statement, because that's what the thesis statement of a rhetorical analysis is all about, you are very specific about the author's purpose. What are they trying to get the audience to do, think, or believe, or what are they informing the audience about? Okay? So in a rhetorical analysis, the author's purpose is what you write your thesis statement about. Okay? Finally, our stylistic choices, and this is where all of the pieces of the puzzle come together. So if my thesis statement identifies the author's purpose, my body paragraphs in a rhetorical analysis are going to be about the stylistic choices the author uses to help them achieve that purpose. That's where the other components of the rhetorical situation come into play. If I say the author uses specific word choice, they choose specific diction, that's my stylistic choice. That would be the topic sentence of my paragraph. Then I would rely on the same format that we've been talking about for all of our essays. Evidence. So I give a piece of evidence from the text. I take an example of that word choice, that wording, and I give the example. In my reasoning, I have to explain how that wording affects my specific audience during the context of the piece. How does that word affect the audience? And when I can tell who the audience is and how that word would affect the audience, or how that phrasing would affect the audience, I can then explain how it would help the author achieve the purpose. Basically, how is the author manipulating the audience to get them to do what he or she wants? Okay? Now, you are not limited to the terms that are on this slide. You're not limited to word choice, syntax, figurative language. The other things that aren't even on here that we've talked about multiple times are ethos, logos, pathos. You can use those as well. So any literary device that we've ever talked about in class, any literary device you've talked about in any of your English classes are fair game. Okay? So you think about, what does the author use in the piece to help him or her achieve his or her purpose? All right? That's the basics of a rhetorical analysis. This should have all sounded familiar to you. If you've watched this video, if you've gone through the PowerPoint on Google Classroom, there is an assignment that's also on Google Classroom. It is not an AP prompt, it's an SAT prompt. So although the SAT is on hold, it's inevitable that you'll have to take it at some point. So you're going to read that essay. Do not write an essay response to it. You're going to read the prompt. Do not write an essay. Look at the directions that are at the top. You are going to read the article and annotate it, looking for the elements that we just talked about. Make notes to yourself. Who would be the audience? What is the author's purpose? What is the author trying to get the audience to do? Then look for stylistic choices in the piece. Highlight them. Make notes to yourself on what effect they would have to the audience. Now you have a few options for turning this in and getting feedback. You can highlight and use a comment function on the actual document. You can open up a separate Google Doc and take notes off of what you have read, or you can totally just take notes on a note piece of loose leaf in your notebook, whatever. Take a picture of it and send it to me. I will give you feedback. So again, we're looking at practicing for writing these essays, which will appear on the AP exam, the SAT, and also in your college classes. Again, it's a very, very common assignment in all basic comp classes. As always, if you have any questions, just send them to me on Remind, send them to me in an email, or put a comment on this video, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I hope you're all still doing well and still staying healthy. Miss you. Bye.